All right, so that was a very interesting conversation. I had no idea that we had spent an hour because I had meant to limit it to an hour, but at the end I'm like, no, let's keep having this conversation. But we could pick it up again later. But I thought I'd add some thoughts. So, uh, my thoughts were so all over the place. I don't think I made a particular point. People will probably take particular points out of it, and I'll stand behind the things I said or explain them or whatever is necessary. Um, but I think the thing with Da Spook was that it was a similar situation where my thoughts are inclined to race, and that's how my thoughts really are. And I think I've been open. At one time I thought that's what Gary meant by calling me phantasmagorical, and I think I've been open about that. And I think thinking that I would just drink a reasonable amount, though, I got into this state where my thoughts are racing, and I think the self-medication aspect of alcohol for me is trying to slow those thoughts down, trying to slow it down, and I think to a degree that can work. Problem with alcohol and all vices are, what happens with excess, what happens if you lose control, and it just kind of takes its own course and stuff. But it can work. It can help people cope with racing thoughts for that reason. And I think most of these vices, I'm not into demonizing them. You know, taking smoke breaks for a few years now, I plugged into a whole different culture. I've talked to the keynote speakers at conferences I was at because the guy happened to be a smoker. So that's what I'm dealing with. As I presented my epistemology, it's a grounding influence on me. It's something that I've systematized out of this noise, where I've separated a signal from the noise, and then we can agree on things. I can say, hey, if you go in that direction far enough, you'll come up behind from this direction. And that's mundane because we all know about the round world. And 5 centuries ago, the astronomers thought the world was a sphere, but popular conception, it's like our Western bias isn't even Western. It's just bias of historical accident. Things that are known and still believed by a certain set of people, astronomers, are considered controversial. And it's natural philosophy that has allowed us to share so much meaning about how things work, and that's, I think, why it's frustrating when people, don't really absorb, how weird relativity is, for example. How, does 2 plus 2 equal 4? Well, 0.2 plus 0.2 in velocity, 0.2c plus 0.2c doesn't equal 0.4c, like it should, classically. So, that people don't want to accept that part. It's like sometimes I feel like it's hard enough to communicate meaning back and forth with each other, that for people to, sort of deny some of the things that have so much evidence for them right now. It just makes it even harder. We can't all even get up to date or up to speed. By the way, the guy I was thinking about with great lectures in quantum information theory, and who goes into this relationship between entropy as an element of information theory and quantum computing as basically the current state of quantum mechanics, is Seth Lloyd of MIT. So, if I had to guess, probably people will pick out where we were talking about Gary and the modern mystic. That's the thing that most of you will probably pick out as meaningful. And it's as meaningful as any coincidence. It's what you're primed to see. Okay? And other than that, I can anticipate I think if people I've gotten a lot of feedback of, oh, you're losing it. And I've been just gathering it together. I mean, I don't understand really that perspective. I mean, uh, just in general, the way I presented my life in general, and then with my daughter passing, of course, of course that's maddening. Of course my thoughts race. Of course I would never have said anything else. And in fact, I've tried to present that, and that gets into sort of, I have an attitude of, well, who cares if you understand me? But then again, I get to these points where it's frustrating. It's like, well, I thought this part was clear, I think the world is crazy. I think most people are crazy, and part of the problem is our understanding of sanity. But I don't mean it in a non-literal way, right? So, if I mention some things, and because they seem relevant, but I don't go over and over, and then when I start mentioning spirituality, people have this reaction, like they've just noticed something that I've been talking about the whole time and constantly, as far as I can tell. So, yeah, to me, I'm going to stick with finding some of these meanings. I do think it is meaningful that thou art that sort of legitimized the idea of just talking pure philosophy on YouTube, and that there's finally a domain for that, and to talk with a broad spectrum of people about philosophy, and his relationship to John's relationship to M.K. Kurt, what I was trying to tell M.K. Kurt, I always say M.K. Kurt, Mr. Kurt, and the fact that Mr. Kurt is now closed his channel, and that, Gary is so incensed that I would talk to somebody as if that's any of his business. And that has meaning to me, that sequence of events, and I don't know what exactly it means. I just have a sense that it's meaningful, so I'm going to keep looking at it and analyzing it and trying to find out, what those are footprints of. So, and I do feel an activist urge coming in, where I just think the deniers of meaning have gotten away with too much. It's not justified, and if you don't get to use science to defend it, because if you're basing it on determinism, scientists don't advocate that anymore. They might come around, it might get into fashion again, great, you'll have to wait till then. In the meanwhile, they say that things are determined at the moment of interaction, and there's a coherent state where things are in a non-deterministic, actual, ontologically extant, in space and time, there's an indeterminacy, and that's just what they think now. You don't have to believe me, I don't care, but I don't have to let you get away with misquoting them when, I know from the horse's mouth that that is the case. It's like, you want to argue against that, that's fine, but you don't get to ignore what Feynman has said on the subject, right? You don't get to ignore what the physicists are teaching and what they say that they believe. You can think they're wrong. You can go and try to find the people that that do still believe in determinism. They're the outliers. You could go find the people with hidden variable theorems, and you'll find out that their theorems are pretty freaking non-intuitional as well, in different ways, and that they are outliers. That is not the consensus. Science is not backing you guys up in that. It just isn't.